biggest predictor of injury rate is when you increase your long run dramatically compared to any single distance run that you've done.
Are you running a marathon? Oh my god, I could never run a marathon. You sure about that? My god, a marathon is like 42 kilometers, 26 miles. I don't understand those people.
That used to be me, but not anymore. Welcome to the Marathon Podcast. My name is Christian Warwick. Warwick runs on Instagram, YouTube, sometimes on TikTok. Really happy to have you here. Today is one of my favorite episodes that I've ever recorded with anyone. And this was with Cathal, Cathal McCarron, who also was on this episode with several runners that I had just last week. And what was amazing about this chat was how specific Cathal was on his training, his paces, but also advice for others. He is a physiotherapist, so he has a lot of experience with injuries and how to deal with them. He's a 2:27 marathoner, and just I guess he would characterize himself as a running nerd, which is super cool. I just love everything that he talked about, and I think that all of us, we can benefit from listening to this. So I'm not even going to talk about my own running here. The only thing that I'm going to say before we jump into this conversation with Cathal is remember that you can get 20% off with or on an annual subscription with Strava by using the code Christian. Check the show notes to see how you spell that. And I really recommend that. I love the features that Strava has. And again, very happy to be able to offer you something back, not just advertising for a product without giving you any discounts. So 20% off Strava yearly subscription. And with that, let's just jump to the conversation with Cathal. Cathal, welcome back to the Marathon Podcast. Just a week after the episode came out, you're back on. How was the holidays?
It was great. Thanks for having me on, Christian. Yeah, it was lovely holidays with a nice time over the Christmas. Spent time with the family and ate plenty of food. So got to work that off now.
Perfect. Like obviously we got to know you a little bit in that last episode, but it was only 20 minutes and there were so many things that I kind of wanted to talk a little bit more about. But for those who haven't listened to that episode already, why don't you just give a quick little recap about yourself, or like introduce yourself again and who Cathal is?
Yeah. So my name's Cathal McCarron. I'm from Ireland, Kildare. It's just a small county outside of Ireland. I started marathon running a couple of years ago, but really in the last 12 to 18 months is when I only really started into it. I suppose my story is kind of a little bit different. I started marathon running really when I kind of hit 29. I just got married. We'd just had a baby, and I was like, God, I really would like to do a marathon before I'm 30. My dad was kind of a pro runner back in the day, and I dabbled a little bit in running during my kind of teens, but was never really good at it. And I kind of focused more on getting a decent kind of school exams so I could get into a decent enough college. Moved to the UK, ran a little bit there, and when I came back, started working and started coaching myself. And I'm really into, like, because I'm a physiotherapist and I did a background in sports science and stuff, I'm really into like philosophy and the science-based training. So I was a bit of a running nerd. So in 2024, we were building our house, and my wife is pregnant my wife is pregnant, and I was like, right, the Dublin Marathon is in October, and it's like, right, I've been running quite well over the last year, but just 40, 50 miles myself, and it was going well, but I wanted to get like the best coach that I thought was around, which is Kevin Seward. He's an Olympian and he's a marathon runner. He's based in the UK, but he's Irish. He's based over in Loughborough. And the reason I chose him as well is because he's a full-time teacher. But not only is he a teacher, he's like kind of really high up in the school, so he a lot of other demands. So I know he was balancing work life and training at a really high level. So I thought he could relate to me a little bit more. So yeah, during that period from April to October, um, it was busy, um, and got the first marathon in 2:37, and that was my first one. I got that on the board, and that was probably around about 50 miles on average a week, and 50 to 60 miles a week, I think, on average. That was 2024, and then in 2025, um, sorry, my wife had our baby then in the April of 2025, and everybody was saying, "Oh, you can't do it. Like, there's no way you could have a baby work full time as a physio in an older person's ward, which is geriatrics. And so I look after people with Parkinson's disease, dementia, frailty, and sarcopenia and things like that. So I work 8 to half four, half 8 to half four, Monday to Friday, and then the odd weekend as well. And so I kind of everybody was like, "Oh, well, you can't run and have a baby and train and work full time." But I seen a few people doing it in the country, and I said, "Well, look, I have to give it a go." And and I sat down with my wife, who was really, really supportive, and she is supportive. I wouldn't be able to do any of this without her, and there's no way, absolutely no way. So we sat down and said, "All right, how can we manage this?" So I just flipped my training completely. Whereas I used to train in the evenings, like most people do after work, you do that. But I said, right, I'm gonna get up at like 4:45, 4:30 every day, drive to Dublin because we don't live near Dublin, so I have to drive to Dublin, and train before work, get my training done 2 hours, and then when I get home, then I can be with them, help with the baby and things like that. And also she plays sports, so that allows her then when I'm back, then she could go and do her thing in the evening time, and I'll put the baby to bed and stuff like that. So yeah, it can be done, but it's a lot of planning and a lot of commitment, and just I suppose having somebody that's backing you. And thank God Catherine, my wife, and my family are really good at supporting me with it. Yeah,
Yeah. It's
that's it.
it's really impressive. Like 227 marathon, you're at a very high level already. And this is just like what, a year and a half after you kind of did your first marathon?
Yeah, so my
Or maybe
first
just a
marathon
year.
was in October. Yeah, so it was a year. So October 24 was my first one, and that was off like 50 to 60 miles a week. And we had no child at the time. Um, and then the second one was exactly a year, so October 2025. Sorry, I did go to Seville actually in February, but I really didn't improve at all. It was from so if Seville, as you know, was in February. So October was the first one, 2:37. Then I went to Seville in the February of 2025, and I really didn't improve. Well, I took a minute off, which some people are like, yeah, that would be good. But like when you compare the course Seville compared to Dublin, like Seville is pancake flat, whereas Dublin is not. So really, I don't think there was much fitness
Mm-hmm.
gain. It was probably more so continuance of fitness, and more so the environment that actually probably provided me with that 1 minute of improvement. So then I kind of sat down with Kevin. I was like, right, how do I make a jump? And he was like, right, well, we need to up the miles. So I said, right, let's do it. And we set like process goals. So because I was really into science and philosophy, so I was like, right, I read about these process goals. Can we do that? Is that something that you're interested in? Ken was like, yeah, let's do it. So I had a process goal of hitting a certain 10K time, a certain 10-mile time, a certain half time, and I knew if I hit those times two out the block, that would put me in a good stead to run close to 2:30. My initial goal was like 2:32, 2:33. I thought that would be good, and then maybe the third marathon, um, or sorry, the fourth marathon would be maybe like sub 2:30. So I didn't really think that I'd take 10 minutes off in a year from October 24 to October 25. But after the half marathon that I did during the training block, it was 6 weeks before Dublin, and it was like okay, um, with all the equations and all the calculators and all the science out there, it showed that I was coming in at like 2:29:45. So
Mm-hmm.
and I had another 6 weeks of training to go. So yeah, that was how that went. Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously, coming from what it sounds like, it's a running family with your dad. I'm curious to hear more about that, because if I remember correctly, your dad had like his half marathon PR was like low 60s, like 62, 63.
62, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
62, yeah. Yeah, so dad went to McNeese State University for college. Back then in Ireland, I think he was one of the first ever Irish runners to go to America. Now it's a really common thing now. But back then there was very few people had made the travel over, and you can imagine this was in like the 70s, so not a lot of people had really gone to America at that stage. So yeah, he went over there to McNeese, and he studied to be like a PE teacher. And he ran there. He ran quite well in McNeese State. Came back to Ireland. He was running. He got a sort of a pro contract with Brooks at the time, and I think it was more like shoes and gear and things like that. And he ran quite a high level in Ireland in road running. He went to the World Marathon Championships in Bilbao, for Ireland, and he ran the marathon there. His marathon times, he would say himself, don't equate to his half marathon. Like the 62 doesn't equate to. He ran, pretty sure it was like 2:20. And for the marathon, he was on for like a 2:13, 2:12. He went over to it was, God, where was it? Somewhere in Asia anyway, and he was running a marathon over there. And he was on for like low 2:10, 2:12. And a spectator threw like a bucket of water over him, and and he like completely like swallowed out, like choked and swallowed all the water
Oh.
and everything like that. It was in Korea. It was in Korea. That's where it was. And so the race was an absolute flop, and I think he just, by the time he came back to Dublin, I think he was married and there was kids on the way, and kind of just didn't really go back to it then. So I think he never probably reached his full potential in the marathon. Although he ran for Ireland and he did quite well. His like he has like a 49-minute 10-mile time, and yeah, his half is really good and things like that. So yeah, I think the marathon was one that he was he won a lot of marathons around Ireland. So can't be wrong. He came really high up in the national championship in Ireland, but I think never got to where he probably could have got to. And
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, he was a big kind of inspiration for me. And my mom, she's more into academia. She's a professor in in a big university, Trinity in Ireland. So, but she did a bit of running as well when she met him. And she ran like 3:10, which is pretty good for somebody who doesn't
Wow.
who didn't do
Yeah, that's fast.
too much running. Yeah, yeah. Um, so yeah, Dad was a big inspiration to me for running for sure. He never really pushed me into running though. He actually was like, "Nah, I don't want you to kind of get into running." And
Mm-hmm.
like we had a local running club like right down the road. And I was like, "Oh, I want to go there." Like I knew he was a really good runner. You'd see the medals and you'd see the trophies and stuff. And he never really wanted me to go do it, and I could never really understand it. It's not that he didn't want me to go do it. He always just said, "Or wait till you're older, like wait till you're 17, wait till you're 18." I was like 10 at the time, 10, 11. And I think he knew the rate of burnout by the time you get to like 18. Like if I started at 10, would I end up ever getting to a senior athlete? And the transition's really poor, from kids who start at a really young age, and the amount of them that actually transition into a senior athlete is very small. So I think that's where he was coming from with that. It's not that he didn't want me to be a runner, it's more so that he didn't want me to start that early. But I wore him down, and he eventually brought me up to the track. But I wasn't very good at all, really all the way through, up until I was kind of a teenager. And then I was playing lots of other sports, basketball and hurling, and I was doing a lot of music at the time. And then we had our exams, like when where you're leaving cert 16, 17, 18, you have to like kind of focus on them. And my mom being so academically focused, she it's not that she was pressurizing me to like, do your exams really well. I wanted to do really well because I seen how good she is at academia. So I kind of pushed myself to try and do well. And then went to the UK and studied over there and like that. And I went to the UK. I did run, but it was more so as a way of providing me with an outlet, because I think it's really good for mental health, especially now, like balancing life. I would be absolutely lost without it. Like I think from a mental
Yeah.
side of things, it really helps me sort of regulate and keeps me sane. It's a lot cheaper than therapy, and
Yeah.
uh,
Well, depends on how many
um,
shoes you have.
exactly. Depends on how many shoes you have. That's true. So yeah, and I met a man over there called Trevor who kind of really took me under his wing over there, and he picked me up every day, brought me running every day, and he's now somebody who nearly calls me every second day. He's in his 60s, but he just seen me running in a park one day over in the UK and was like, "Hey, do you want to join our club?" And I joined their club, and he's like a second father figure to me now. And he's probably one of the only reasons that I actually got through university over there, because it was tough being away from home and being away from family and Catherine, things like that. So yeah, he was a big reason that I probably stayed in the sport as well. Then when I came home, that's when I think my running really started, was when I came back. And I suppose time pressure is a great thing. So yeah, when you're reaching your 30s, you're like, okay, let's try and get going here, because you only have about 10 years of, well, not that you only have 10 years, but I think they say like your prime marathon running is kind of between your 30s and late 30s to early 40s. You see some people doing really well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so last time we talked, I remember I got kind of the feeling that you were not new to running, but a little bit, especially because you just did your first marathon last year. When
Yeah.
you grew up and when you were able to convince your dad to take you to the track, how
Yeah.
big of a part of your life was running, like growing up, say from 10, 11, 12, and up until today? And how much, yeah, how big of a presence has it had in your life since then?
So when I was like 10, 11, 12, it had a presence in my life, but not majorly. Like, I seen dad going out running all the time. And but yet again, he didn't want to force that upon me, and I thank him for that, because it is quite an isolating sport. It's not a sport that there's a massive amount of groups of friends, and I think you know yourself, like it's quite a solitary sport in so many ways, And so I think as a child, although it's getting better, uh, I think he kind of wanted me to be in more like group um sports and things like that. So we have our national sport to be like hurling, and then I did basketball and I did soccer and things like that. And I was absolutely terrible at all of them. I'm not gonna lie. I wasn't good. So I don't know why he didn't force me into running a little bit sooner, because I might have been a little bit better at that than the other sports. But it definitely had a presence in my life, and it definitely helped. I kind of probably ran a little bit more seriously when I was like 14, 15, 16. And that definitely helped with like school pressures and things like that. And I really enjoyed it from that point of view. And it was always something in the background. Like every Sunday in our house, we always went to the local forest as a family and we all went for a run. And it would always be like a 5K or a 10K. And that was just what we did every single Sunday. And then when we were 13, my mum and dad actually built a house like right beside the forest. So then, and the reason they did that is because we spent so much time at this forest park. And so now that forest park is like right down the road from me now where I built my house. So it's great. And I think that whole thing, just having an active lifestyle from my parents, seeing them being quite active and them being into running, probably stayed with me throughout my life. And gave me a good, I suppose, work ethic as well. Because I seen that like running it's hard. It's not easy, and it's very much the pressure is on you. Like it's easy in team sports. You can hide behind, oh well, we lost today, we lost a game, but from when I was playing anyway, it's like, yeah, we lost the game, but it not all that loss is on that one person.
Hmm.
Whereas in running, it's very much kind of, and I think when you're a teenager, like that's a lot of pressure. It's hard. So I think that's why Dad was like, it's a tough sport, it's pressurized, and it can be hard and lonely at times. So I think that's why he was more happy to see me develop later on in life, where, you're a bit more resilient when you're older. You've gone through a bit of life, you've gone through ups and downs, and you're a bit more thick skinned. And and I'm glad that it's kind of worked out that way. Because I think my kind of running years and running miles on the clock isn't as much that it probably could have been. Now, don't get me wrong, it wasn't low because I still ran quite well. Like I went to a university in Ireland for 2 years on like a running scholarship, but it was like the lowest level grade running scholarship there was before I got into physiotherapy in the UK. And I did run there, but I was always getting injured and things like that. I think in some ways I was burning the cart at both ends. I was trying to run really hard. That was before I really delved into the science of running and load management. And now that I look back, I was definitely training too hard and things like that. So
Yeah.
that's where now I think I built that consistency because I understand a lot more from the physiotherapy point of view, and also just from having read probably every single running book and talked to nearly every running coach I could possibly talk to. And just analyzing other people's running data, and that it's probably led to me not having, touch wood, many injuries over the last couple of years. So yeah.
Yeah. So what would you say? Because it sounds like running has definitely been a big part of your life, regardless of it being races or like competitive
Hmm.
running. You still been running quite a
Yeah.
lot. Um,
Yeah.
and you did mention that you were not super talented, like from a very young age. But as you got
Yeah.
older, you said you got a scholarship. Like so you were
Yeah.
probably at like a decent level. So although you were injured, you still had some good pace and some good races in you. Um, when did you realize
Yeah.
that? Oh, I'm fairly good at this.
I yeah, I think so. So the way it worked is I got into a sports science degree in a university in Ireland. It's called Athlone University now. It was called like Athlone Institute of Technology back then, but it's now a university. But it's in the Midlands, and they had just opened the first ever indoor arena. So like our first ever proper indoor track in Ireland. So it was like, wow, like that's so cool. I'd love to go there. So when I got the opportunity to go there, that was great. I didn't get in there via running. I got in there just
Okay.
via, got the points and got in there. And
Got
then
it.
subsequent to starting in there, you could apply to do to get on to like their athlete scholarship scheme, and they had like gold, silver, and bronze. And then I got onto the bronze scheme. I think at the time I had ran when I was like 16, I'd ran like a 34-minute 10K when I was 16, and I ran like I think I ran 16 minutes flat or something like that. And I think I ran like a 58-minute 10 mile as well when I was about 16. So, they were good, relatively okay times for a junior athlete. Nothing like that would knock the lights out, but they were decent enough. And I had ran well in some local kind of club level races, and I was with a club at the time called Denor Harriers, and it was a Dublin club, and we had done quite well in a few competitions and things like that. So I think that's how I kind of got onto the scheme. Um, was via that, yeah,
Yeah. Okay, so then you had kind of at least a very good foundation when you decided
yeah.
to do your first marathon. Uh, because now, how old are you today?
Today I'm 30 and I'm 31 in 2 weeks' time.
Okay, congrats on your upcoming birthday. Uh, but so that means that like between university or college and now there's been some time, but you still had like a good foundation when you decided to do your first marathon. How much running did you
Yeah.
do between then and starting the first marathon block?
y- Yeah. So I'd say when I was in university in the UK up to start my first marathon block, so let's say the age of like 23, 24, up to let's say 29, I was self-coached. I coached myself, and I never got injured. And because I probably from the physiotherapy degree and sports science degree, and kind of looking at heart rate data and looking at all the sports science stuff, that was a really good time for me. Um, but I was so cautious about increasing mileage too much, because I had so many injuries as a youth. Like I think I'd 4 stress fractures, as a teenager, and that's not healthy. Like I'd I'd one major surgery then on my leg as well, because I had a fasciotomy done on my leg because I had a tibialis posterior hernia, um, in my left leg. So I had a lot of kind of injuries in youth. So I think I was nearly scarred in a way from training too hard. So mileage kind of freaked me out. And I don't think any of it was a result of mileage. I think it was all due to intensity, really. So when I was coaching myself, I was like, right, I kind of nearly was quite being protective, but um, I was doing okay. I went to Leeds. The Leeds 10K is quite a good 10K in Ireland. Sorry, in the UK, and I ran 32 minutes there, and that was a big opener for me, being like, okay, like that's a decent enough time. And I ran, I think it was like 32:30 or something like that. And I had also ran like 15:25. So that was in 2023, 2022, I think. And that was all me coaching myself. So I got myself to a decent enough level at that stage, I would say, like low 15 minutes for 5K and 32 minutes for the 10. So yeah, so I was pretty happy with that. Didn't really progress too much after that. I was kind of still steady along, and um, then from then on, so that was off like 40, 50 miles a week. And then the following year, um, we got married and all that stuff, and I was like, right, let's see if I can do this marathon stuff. So yeah, I had a background. I was okay in like the lower level stuff, but really had never moved on to any high mileage or even moderate mileage. It was still quite low miles. And before I went into meeting Kevin, my coach, Kevin Seward, and then getting stuck into the marathon stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
And even that
Okay.
actually for when oh, go ahead, sorry.
No, keep going.
Even when I joined up with Kevin, I was very afraid of running high mileage. So, I was like, oh, I only want to run 5 days a week. I don't want to run any more miles than this mileage. And, so it was very much kind of me putting limits on myself at the time. And then slowly Kevin was increasing the mileage. And I was kind of happy with that. But it was a nice gradual, slow progression. So I think it worked out well. And I ended up getting to, the 60 miles a week and 65. And whereas that was something I would never, ever have imagined, in that first marathon block. So, yeah.
So, first of all, when you're talking about this, you sound so smart, like training wise. It seems like you learned a lot, and like especially coming from those injuries when you were younger, and now being able to do what you're doing. And also, obviously, being a physiotherapist, you do have an advantage, like compared to say me or a lot of people listening to this who are not. For people who are or find themselves in the same situation as you were in terms of feeling like, oh, I can't up my mileage. I'm a low mileage person. And if I try to go higher, I'm going to get injured. And I also don't see that progress. It seems like you learned a lot on this. What are your experiences, your advice for other runners in terms of upping their mileage if they're struggling with the same things as you did? I don't mean to interrupt, but I am still doing it. Do you see this hat? It's now also in white, and it's available on themarathonpodcast.com. It's worldwide shipping, ships, so you'll have your hat within 1 to 3 days of shipping. So maybe, I don't know, 5 days after ordering it maximum. And I'm really, really excited about these ones. It's in black and white. And again, head over to themarathonpodcast.com to buy one, and everything that I make on this year will go directly back to the Marathon Podcast sponsorship.
Yeah, it's something that I get every day. I get people kind of asking me this quite a lot. And I suppose you need to look where you're at. Like, what's your current level of running? How many miles are you actually doing a week currently, and what goal do you want to achieve? And you have to park your ego. Strava is great. Strava is absolutely brilliant, but I think Strava and all of these online platforms have also played a part in people running too fast than their body is able for. So when I see runners and they're like, "Oh God, you're so fast," like I'm not. Well, I don't think so, but they're like, "Oh, you're so fast," and how do you do that? And like, I'm like, "Oh well, it's just building up the mileage gradually building it up." And oh, I can't run that many miles a week. And I might ask them, "Oh, like what pace do you run for your runs?" And they're running faster than I am. Like, hold on, like you're running like 4:45, 5 minute Ks for your runs, but you can't even run 23 minutes for 5K. It doesn't make any sense. And they're like, oh, but like if I run slower, I just don't feel like I'm doing anything. I'm like, but that's the key. Like you're running too fast for your body's ability. So I sometimes I'm a bit harsh. I was like, you've no business running that fast. And that's not me being mean. It's just me saying to them, when you get to a certain pace, yeah, you can definitely run that fast, no problem. But if you want to increase your mileage, you can't increase your mileage while running at threshold pace for every single run you do. I try to break it to them that, like, right, here's my 5K time. Let's say it's, I don't know, 15 minutes, 15, 20, right? And I say, well, I'm running my easy runs at 5 minutes a kilometer, right? Here's you and your 23 minutes. Okay. There's nearly 8 minutes in the difference there. Okay. Like, how are you running the same pace that I'm running for my easy runs? Like, you should be running 6:30s for your easy runs. And they're like, oh, and I tried to explain to them, well, like your easy runs technically should be around 90 seconds slower than your 5K race pace. That's just an it's not a bad position if you're not running off heart rate data or anything like that. And to be honest, zone 2 training for an amateur isn't really that effective because their heart isn't developed enough to actually run at that pace. So I would kind of always say to somebody who's just starting out to actually more so look at what recent time trial have you done, and then be able to base their threshold runs and their easy runs around that. But I would always give them like maybe 90 seconds to 2 minutes slower than your 5K race pace. Should you start your easy runs, and then the building up, you've obviously, everybody's heard of the 10% increase per week. That is something that has been out for many years, and it's a nice rule of thumb. But recent research has shown that actually injury rate isn't isn't only linked to that, and that's not the biggest predictor of injury rate. The biggest predictor of injury rate is when you increase your long run dramatically compared to any single distance run that you've done. So let's say, so what do I mean by that? So let's say you are only running 10Ks, and your longest distance was 10K, and then you go out 3 weeks later and you run like 25. That's a massive increase in distance, and that would be the key cause of a running injury, rather than that mileage jump, because you can get away sometimes with a 10, 15, sometimes 20% mileage increase depending on the level of the athlete. But actually, it's the dramatic increase in a single run would be actually the highest risk of injury for an athlete. Um, and the speed at which you run at as well, like intensity is huge. Intensity distribution and the chronic acute load ratio, the chronic workload ratio. I would try to talk to athletes about. It's like, right, periodizing throughout the week. If you look at your week as a whole, if you're running, let's say, 4 or 5 days a week, and how much of that is easy versus how much of that is hard, and you know where you've come from. They're all like, oh, I want to do 2 sessions a week. I want to do a hard run. I want to do this, that, and the other. It's like, whoa, like there's no way that's happening. And I was like, that's not possible. It's like, you want to get longevity in the sport, yeah. We'll do. You want to get a time in 6 weeks, yeah. You could probably get away with it for 4 or 5 weeks potentially, and you'll probably make some gains. Don't get me wrong. You do 2 hard interval sessions a week, you might get away with that for 4 weeks, and you might get a PB. But you're not getting away with that for 4, 5, 6, 7 months. That's not happening. You're gonna break down. It's shown everywhere that you can get those dramatic increases in VO2 quite quickly of an untrained athlete. And they'd be like, oh well, this works. I'm gonna keep doing this. Like, no, it doesn't work like that. So yeah, that's kind of the conversations I would have with people. Yeah.
Wow. Sometimes on this podcast, I'm sitting here and I'm listening, and I get this feeling where it's like, okay, this is one of the best or most important conversations that I've had. And also, I'm like, how can I make people listen to just these like 5 minutes of explanation? And that's how I feel right now. I think that you described and explained this in such a good way, and I think that a lot of people might hear these things but phrased in a different way, and then they don't really understand it. I think that what you did now is making it so much easier, just at like 90 to 120 second rule, like based on the 5K time. I think that makes it so much easier for people to kind of grasp that, okay, this is what it's like. Because people,
Yeah.
I think that people might struggle to believe sometimes that people like are people just making up that number when they're saying that,
Yeah.
oh yeah, you should do a 6:30 pace like for your easy runs.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, that sounds like a
Yeah.
made up number. And also
Yeah.
I've had friends telling me that, but my friends are doing this, right? And then I remember especially I had a conversation with a friend, and he was fairly new to running, and he was talking about his friends they were doing these hard workouts where they were almost throwing up after every repetition, right? And they were training for a half marathon. And he was talking about, yeah, I don't really have progress. And I was like, well, I think like that workout that you just described, that is probably the reason, or one of them. And then it was like, yeah, but all of my friends, they're running really fast and they're doing it. And I was like, well, how fast are they running? And he said, well, their half marathon PR is like 1:30 or something like that. And then I was like, and I didn't like this probably can't come off as very arrogant, but I said, well, at the day that they are actually running 1:10, then you can come back to me and say that that is the right thing to do. And I don't mean that
Yeah.
like you have to
No.
run a 1:10 half marathon to know what you're doing, but it's just that some people might manage to do those really hard workouts and you like they almost kill themselves and they still run decent times, because like 1:30 half marathon is it's a good time, right? But it's
Yep.
just that
Yep.
they don't know how fast they could have been. And I think that is where,
Yeah.
like, so then you have the performance part, but then you obviously have the injury part as well. I think that like you talking about these things, it's just like it also makes me, I'm sure you've heard that I've been talking about this on the last couple of episodes on my podcast, that I'm struggling
Yep.
a bit now with the fact that my heart, my lungs, like my capacity is getting to a level
You're really fit.
where I'm really fit, but my knees, my calves, my
Legs.
hamstrings,
Yeah.
yeah, can't really keep
They
up
can't
with
keep
that.
up with you.
So I think
Yeah.
that like hearing you saying this, I'm just gonna be like, okay, I need to be even better at this. And yes, I think that part of it is Strava, but part of it is also, and I wanted to ask you about the heart rate, because for me at least, I look at my heart rate and it's still low. Like I'm still mid zone one, right? and
Yeah,
uh,
and it would
uh,
it
uh,
it will be low for you. Like if you think of it, you've come from a high speed skater level. You know, you come from an elite league level, so your cardiac ability and output will be so much higher than a normal recreational runner who comes into running. So you're in a different kind of category. You're somebody who's is new to running, but your heart and lungs aren't new to high level exercise. So your heart is somewhat trained already. So it's gonna find running quite easy, you know, for your cardiac output, for your heart rate. So that's why it's gonna be so low for you. Um, and but I think, thank God you come to that realization of yourself that my heart is stronger than my body is right now. And that's the
yeah.
key, because if you had kept going just off heart rate, you would have seen, oh well, my heart rate's low. I'm gonna keep going here. I'm gonna absolutely chew the road up. But no, you can't do that, because yeah, your heart is so strong, but your body's anatomy, like your bones, your muscles, and your tendons, they don't have that capacity just yet. They will get it over time, but they just have to catch up. They have to catch up with the rest of your cardiovascular system already is.
Yeah, and I think that's like, I think it's also hard sometimes to accept the signs that your body is sending you,
Yeah.
right? Because, or signals. I think that for me at least over the holidays now, I felt so good, and I'm not gonna lie, it's an amazing feeling, right? To do like 420,
Yeah.
430 on my easy runs and feel like I'm actually running easy runs. Like that's what it
Easy.
felt
Yeah.
like. That's what my heart rate told me. Uh, but I also realized that whenever I got home or whenever I started my next run, it would feel a bit more like, oh, I'm a bit more stiff. There's something. It's not still, I can still keep that same pace without putting a lot of effort into it, but I still am
Mm-hmm.
also
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, something is tearing on my muscles, my joints. Everything feels a bit more robotic in some ways. And
Yeah.
I guess like my question to you, based on like that feeling that I had, and I'm sure you've experienced this as well, because to some people like me, for instance, it works for a couple of weeks, and honestly, it worked for more weeks than just a couple of weeks, where I still felt fairly good, although it was a bit stiff. What signs can people look for in terms of that? Do you have any signs that you're like, oh, now my body is telling me that
Yeah.
I've been doing a bit too much, too high intensity? What are you looking for?
Yeah. It's that's kind of in physio we call it like the day after effect. So with you, you're kind of nearly an anomaly, like a bit of an outlier. Like you don't have that very often with people, that they're so cardiovascularly fit, that they're feeling inside themselves when they're running. This feels easy because you're used to such high intensity. So this feels easy. My heart rate's telling me it's easy, but why the next day am I feeling sore? So that's where you have to look at the day after effect. So it's how do I feel the next day, and how has my body responded to that training stimulus from the day before? And that's, I think, where if I was training you as a client, let's say, that's where I would kind of pinpoint you to look at is that kind of day after effect, is how am I feeling? Do I feel rested? Do I feel like, after an easy run, it should feel the next day that you didn't do anything the day before. It should feel, you should feel ready to go. But if you're feeling stiff and sore and things like, maybe that wasn't quite as easy as I thought it was. And then just take it back a little bit and then say, right, you were saying you're running 430s, 420s, 430s. Take it back to 430s, 440s, then see what that's like. And then the next day you wake up, it's like, okay, yeah, I actually feel a little bit fresher there today. Um, Maybe that's more so where I should be. And then also going back as well to the standard kind of widespread crude numbers of that sort of 90 seconds to 120. So kind of you could probably go up into the higher end of it, sort of the 90-second end of it, maybe by what you're saying there. And adding that on to your 5K pace, or they say like roughly like 60 seconds to 60 seconds to 90 seconds of your marathon pace, to add on to it, and kind of add that on to find out where that easy pace would be for you. So what's your marathon pace currently? Is like 3:45, is it
No, so
3:50?
so my PR is 247, so I had 3:57:58. So this is where I think that it, like what you're saying, it's like my easy runs should not be that much under or below 5 minutes,
Yeah,
actually,
so I'd be
because
kind of
it's
looking at
20
like
minutes
5 minutes.
between you and
Yeah.
me. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd be kind of looking at that. Yeah, kind of at least that 5 minutes.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
I think, I like, you've started with John Green now, and you're running quite well. You've been training for quite a while, and the last time you did a marathon was when? It was
September.
September. Yeah. So I'd say you'll probably find yourself that you'll probably take quite a chunk off that marathon time now. And I'd say your relative fitness now compared to your PR in September will be quite different.
Yeah.
What I like to do what I like to do sometimes when I feel like, right, my PR was a long time ago, I don't feel like my training paces or my training zones are representative of that fitness back then. I think I probably came a little bit further along the graph. I like to
Hmm.
do like a time trial race or like some sort of race within that block so that I can get a baseline again. So I like to always try get
So,
baselines. So like this is where my new baseline fitness is. And then I can judge things from that. This is where I am at this moment in time. And you
yeah.
can't train for, where you want to be. If you do that, that's a recipe for disaster. I want to be sub 220, but that doesn't mean I'm going to run all my marathon pace workouts at that pace. If I do that, best of luck. I'm not going to get there in 6 weeks' time. You have to train where you are at now and park your ego. But for you, maybe John has some key races in your build up, and then that'll be a bit easier for you to kind of judge your effort level then. Yeah.
Yeah, and I also think that, like, if we keep using me as an example here, because I think it's like, especially now looking back at the last weeks, it's easy for me to say that, okay, I overdid it a little bit because I started feeling something. It's good now, like I don't really feel it, so it's fine. But I'm still a bit in that space where it's okay. I need to be careful, Like I'm at a place where you don't really want to be there because you don't want to think about it whenever you're going out for a run or whenever you're stepping on a treadmill. You want to be where it feels good, right? Like where you feel like, oh, I'm excited for this workout, not I'm scared of getting something. But I think that there were signs early on that I'm probably running a bit too fast. Although, like we said, the my heart rate didn't really tell me that, and it felt easy. But I'm like looking back, I probably should have just kind of repeated to myself, slower, 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 and kept on doing
Yeah.
that. So I don't think that, although, like you said, my baseline is now probably, at least for a lot of things, it's better than my 247 marathon.
Yeah.
I I think that it's better for me to kind of prove to myself that best baseline is higher in the harder workouts rather than the easy ones. I don't think I have anything to lose by running 5:15s in the, like, for my easy runs, and like
Nothing.
obviously touching 450, that's probably okay, but I don't have to go below that. And so I think that the test that you were also saying about the day after, and especially after an easy run, what is it supposed to feel like? And for marathon training, most of our runs are easy, and
Easy.
we
Yeah.
might have like 1 to 2 workouts a week, maybe the long run. And that means that for most days, you're gonna feel pretty good the day after, right? And it's
Yeah.
almost like recovery runs. And so that's been a
Yeah.
great learning experience for me now, although I've always said that I'm a passionate intensity control runner. Like I love making sure that the
Yeah.
intensity is low enough. I'm also
Yeah.
I'm a hypocrite in a way because I am also excited when that easy run feels so easy and my pace is so
So easy.
much faster. Yeah.
But that's just natural. That's just natural, It's everybody gets like that. I get like that all the time. And it's only after you being burnt so many times that
Yeah.
you're able to hold yourself back, and I think it's harder for people who are really new to the sport to do that because they haven't been burnt so many times and they don't realize the effect of just riding that red line the whole
Hmm.
time, you know um and for you, I think now, yeah, as you said, that your baseline is probably a lot different than where it was in September. Um, So it's to maybe get a check on that now, and to see where you're at. And but don't underestimate the load, the cumulative load fatigue as well. So like, yeah,
Exactly.
you're supposed to feel pretty easy after the next day, but how many miles have you done in the last 7, 10 days? Like, I don't know, do you have 1 day off a week or 2 days off a week, or
I have 1 day off a week. Yeah, one rest day.
yeah. So like, let's say you're coming to the end of the week. Like, you might wake up after an easy run and still feel like, God, like I'm tired, like my legs are tired. Well, it at that stage of the week, it might necessarily just mean you ran too hard than the day before. It's probably more likely to be the more cumulative effect of that last
Exactly.
6 days of training, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that's another aspect that you need to think of as well when you're running. Yeah. So there's a few little things there to think about.
So as a 227 marathoner, and it could be that you're even
Yeah.
faster now. Like if you did I don't know if you've done a baseline test recently, but what is
Yeah.
your easy pace?
So now my easy pace is 5 minute Ks,
Hmm.
and some days it'll be more than that. Like, I think yesterday was like 5:10, and then some days it'll be down at like 4:45. But I just go nice and easy. From from looking at the science, from checking my heart, like I check my heart rate. I keep it around the 130 mark, kind of below 130s. Try to keep it below 135, but I'm not a slave to heart rate either, nor am I a slave to pace. I think all of these things are have to come together in little ways, so if you have your heart rate, you also have your pace, and you have that in your mind. I want to keep it around 135. I want to keep my pace in around kind of, I don't know, bracket of like 4:45 to like 5:10 maybe. But I also then have to look at the effort as well. Like, how does this feel? Does this feel easy? You know?
Yeah,
Um, and I have to think of, well, what day of the week is it? You know? So if I'm
exactly.
just after a rest day, yeah, I'm probably gonna be tipping a little bit quicker than 4:40. I might be tipping around 4:35 and 4:40 maybe, but it's relative for where I am at in that week, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I don't know if you get this question a lot, but I feel like at least whenever I explain something like this to someone, I feel like I get the question of, but I saw this person doing this, and like we both know Stephen McAuley, right? Like who's an Irish
Yep.
runner who
Yep.
had an incredible progress like the last 3 to 4 years. Now a
Yep.
2:15
Yep.
marathoner,
Yep.
and I feel like he's an example of someone who, although he's a fast marathoner, he still also runs his like easy runs. If you look at the pace, it's maybe faster than what we're talking about here. It's like, but maybe again, if we use that formula of 60 seconds, he's closer to 60
It's relative,
seconds
yeah.
from his marathon pace, right? But it's very easy
Hmm.
for a lot of us to be like, well, he's running, if we keep using kilometer pace here, but like, or we could use miles
Hmm.
to like, he's running a lot of his
Yep.
easy runs closer to say 6:30 per mile or 4:10 per kilometer. And at least my answer to some people is like, well, first of all, look at his pace compared to his race time. So that is one thing where you can explain it. But there are always exceptions to the rules, right? Some people can't just handle higher intensity. I remember that as a skater too, that some of the people I trained with, they could just survive and handle higher intensity, more high intensity, but also just high intensity in general, or the easy bike rides or runs, they were a bit harder than maybe
No.
what you would think.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but for me, at least, the way I totally resonate and agree with what you're saying. Like that, to me, that is the way to go. And I feel like it's the safest way. And I feel like that will work for 95% of all athletes. So
Exactly.
I feel like there's definitely things you can do wrong, and there are things where you can have exceptions, but just like doing that formula that you are describing, I
Yeah.
think that you are pretty safe and it will work. Trying to risk it a bit more, then you have to just gamble on the fact that you are that 5% that can handle it, right?
Yeah, like the Stephen McCauley. If you look at like Stephen McCauley or Jake Barclough, okay, like they're kind of nearly cut from the same stone type runner, and they do a lot of their runs in singles. You know, quite often, like I've had conversations with Stephen over the last while. He's a lovely guy. Um, but even he would say himself, like his training isn't the traditional kind of training that would be out there. You know, he doesn't do a lot of speed work. He doesn't do a lot of workouts. He'd kind of do a tempo run, and he would do a hard long run. And the rest of his runs, although he does high mileage, he does them all in singles, whereas traditionally they would be split into doubles. But that works for him. You know, that works for him, and that works for Stephen. And he would be probably an outlier in kind of running training kind of examples. But he is, and you touched on it perfectly there, he is that 5%. Jake Paraclough is that 5%. If you look at the East Africans and the Kenyans, they would typically split their runs as well into two, you know. So there's very few people that can handle the mileage and the cumulative load as well as Stephen comes, and that comes down to a lot of its genetics. You know, we look at it from research and from physiotherapy. You know, genetics plays a massive role in a lot of this as well. So if you're genetically less predisposed to injury and load, um, you're just really lucky, and
Exactly.
you're one of those 5%. You know, but for the vast majority of us, mm, these traditional sort of standardized methods of training tend to work in the whole.
Yeah. It's super interesting, and it's really fun to discuss this with you. And yeah, I want to also ask you about your own training. But before we dive into
Yeah.
that, you mentioned earlier in this conversation, but also to me before we started recording, that you're a musician. You've been playing the guitar, and
Yeah.
yeah, can you just briefly say something about that? I have a question regarding that, but like, how long has that been a part of your life, and how big of a part has it been?
Oh yeah, music has been a huge part of my life. I've been playing in cafes and pubs and weddings and stuff from, like a young enough age. I started playing in cafes probably when I was still in secondary school. So like 15, 16, the whole way up to now I'm 30. So probably 15, 16 years I've been playing guitar and singing, like a one man band type thing. And then in recent years, I've been doing a lot of pub stuff and playing at weddings, bay twos, and think private events, 30th, 40th, 21st parties, 60th. And that was great. I loved it. I really I play a lot of like Irish music, but also normal pop stuff as well. But that was a huge part of my life, but so was running, and I kinda had to make the call. It was it was last, it was last March was my last sort of big kind of show. I was in a competition, and that was in the March, and then, my child was born in the April, and I kind of sat down with my guy Trevor that I was talking to you about in the UK, who's kind of like a second father figure to me, but also rings me every day and we talk about training and I talk to him quite a lot. I talk to my dad and I talk to Catherine, my wife. We're like, right, like what's more important to me right now? Is it music or is it running? And I said to myself, well, I can always come back to the music. The music will always be there. I can always sit in a stool, play some songs and sing when I can't run at all, you know? But it doesn't work that way the other side, you know? So like I only have a finite window now. So I need to make hay while the sun shines. So I said, right, I'm gonna kind of park the music stuff for the next couple of years and I'll get back to it. I miss it now and again. I took out the guitar over Christmas for a little bit and played things like that and sang a few songs with my father-in-law and that was nice um but it's more so like just like a little hobby thing now and again. But yeah, I just had to make that decision and sort of like stop taking on, kind of doing private work and stuff. Yeah.
And then comes my question, because first of all, I'm very jealous of you being able to do that and having that talent. Like, I play the piano and the guitar myself, but I'm only playing at home because I'm not very good at it. I don't have like a musical, like I I'm I'm not very good at it. I actually did join Norwegian Idol at some point just because I always wanted
Oh
to.
wow.
And so I showed up, I played the guitar, and I was singing Jolene, which is a stupid
Oh yeah.
choice of song. I was told this was what, well, I was still a skater. So I was told to stick to skating. They said the world needs more people like you, but you're not a good singer. So it was kind of just like, I was sent home, brutally
Oh
sent
god.
home, which was fine.
That
Like,
was
that was
harsh.
not a big shock to me. But yeah, I have a question. But you did mention a competition too. What kind of competition was it that you were a part of?
Oh, we there's like so within Ireland there's like uh, it's called the GAA. It's like the Gaelic Association. So our primary sport in Ireland is Gaelic football and hurling. Um, but they also run a competition called Score, and it was originally founded during the off season when Gaelic and football weren't happening, that people would have an activity to do during those months. And so the competition is split up into Irish dancing, singing, group dancing, individual dancing, group singing, a play, and a poem. So I competed in the singles singing, and so I actually won the county competition. So that was nice.
Wow.
And then it then you go from your county, and then it goes into regional stuff. And unfortunately, I didn't get any further than my county. But I was happy with that, and I wanted to kind of do for my father-in-law because he's really into and you represent your local GA club, and which would be traditionally your football or your hurling, and I don't play anymore. But I wanted to give back something to the club in some way. Kappa is the club, and they're really nice. They've always been kind of nice to me at my running. I support my wife. My wife plays for that club, so it was nice to, I suppose, represent that club in some capacity, be it not the traditional methods of playing GA or hurling, but doing it from a singing competition point of view. So yeah, that's what that was.
Awesome. Congrats. That's really cool. So now my question, and I'm sure some of the listeners are like, why is he talking about music? Why is he asking all these questions? The reason is that one thing that I've realized even more as I've gotten into that, like, you know, when things are going well with running, I'm seeing more and more how much rhythm it is in running, like how important that is
Mm.
to the pace and the feeling and
Yeah.
all of it. And sometimes when I get to like
Mhm.
a stop, like I get to like a red light and I have to stop and then I start again. It's almost
Yeah.
like resetting, and I feel like, oh, now I found a different rhythm.
Mhm.
And then I look at my watch and same intensity, but much faster. Just and the only thing that is different, I know, is the rhythm. How much
Mhm.
do you think that you can benefit as a musician who's used to following a rhythm or changing the rhythm based on what you're doing? How much do you think you benefit from that as a runner?
Yeah, I think it comes back to that feeling, like the because you listen probably to your stride a little bit more. You listen to the stepping, um, and with each step, and how smooth it feels, and what the rhythm feels there. I think that probably does play a big part into it. And kind of listening to your breathing a little bit more. I think from a singing point of view, you listen to your breathing and your breathing rate quite a lot. So I think, yeah, it does play a role there. I wouldn't say it plays a massive role for me personally. I just know when if I was to listen to music when I'm running, that really puts me off because I'll automatically start singing, and or running faster than I should be, depending on the tempo of the song. So I only listen to podcasts on my easy runs, and they're my training partners because when you're running at 6 in the morning and there's nobody else to run with, so my training partners are usually my podcasts that I listen to.
Nice. I'm happy to be your training partner then.
You are you've been my training partner for months now, and you don't know it.
That's so cool. Okay, yeah, I think that was a bit far fetched, like for me to ask that question, or I'm not sure if it really, if you can take something away from it, like, but I'm sometimes I'm just overthinking these things, I think, and I feel like at times especially I remember when I was skating, I was thinking about actually taking dance lessons just because in
Okay.
skating it's even more you have to like, because we always think side to side although we're moving forwards, so it's just like side to
Yep.
side and in a rhythm where you get over and then back, over and back. And especially since I didn't
Yeah.
feel like that was a talent of mine, I was like, maybe that would have been a good thing to train on or work on.
Mhm.
And then realizing the rhythm thing with running, I'm like, well, maybe that is also something to think more about. And you hear a lot
Yeah.
about, 180 beats per minute songs. Like there are playlists that you can listen to and run in that
Yeah.
rhythm. And I don't know what your
I
take is on that.
I think yeah, I think I've heard people asking that before about the step, your stride length and your stride rate, and there is some research into if you have a certain number of steps per minute that your injury risk decreases. Yeah, there probably is merit to that scientifically, but real world application for that, it's very difficult to change somebody's natural rhythm and natural running stride without causing a lot of other load in different areas that wouldn't naturally be the body would be used to. So I'd always be a little bit cautious with that. I think your stride rate and your stride length will change as you get fitter, and as you improve, it will naturally probably change in the way it's formed. As you're slower and things like that, you're probably less in that triple extension position and probably less in that upright higher turnover. But as you do get quicker, you will find that your body becomes more efficient, and it would probably start to develop a more efficient stride pattern. It's not to say that every fast person has a lovely stride pattern. That's not what I'm saying. There's some really high level runners who have a non-traditional running pattern, but it works for them, and that's fine. But if you think of it as I always try to say to people, they're sort of outliers. If you look at it as a whole, people tend to become more efficient and in a better pattern of running as they do progress in their running fitness. Yeah, so I wouldn't probably tell people to push into looking at songs and step to certain rates. I think that's more unnatural in a way, and to stick to a more natural gait pattern. Yeah.
But how much do you focus on running form and technique yourself?
I don't I put my hands up. I don't focus on it too much during my easy runs and things like that. I'm so tired in the mornings. I just try and get around whatever pattern that might be. I might be shuffling, or I might be heel striking, but I know I'm getting from A to B, and it's early in the morning, and I need to get this done. But when I'm running at higher intensities, I do naturally go into a much better pattern of running. And I do try to do some drills before I do my speed sessions, just to get me into that better upright position, better midfoot striking position as well, you know. So
Mm.
I think our body naturally falls into that pattern that the work is required of it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay, Cathal, we are getting closer to the end of our conversation, but we need to talk a little bit more about your training and the specifics of it. And I am aware that things have changed since your first marathon in 24. Uh, but if you were to look at your training now and leading up to the 2025 Dublin Marathon, where you did your 227, what has your training looked like specifically throughout the week? We talked about the low intensity runs, but other than that.
So yeah, last marathon block, 50 to 60 miles a week, and that was for the 237 marathon. I did primarily Monday was usually about 8 miles easy. Tuesday was around 8 to 10 miles easy. Wednesday would have been a workout. Thursday would have been 8 to 10 miles easy. Friday, 8 to 10 miles easy, and then Saturday would have been a day off, and Sunday would have been a marathon specific workout. So that would have been two workouts a week. One of them was by itself on a Wednesday, and that would have been primarily a aerobic threshold to lactate threshold type run. And then on this Sunday, it would have been a marathon specific long run session. Um, and then the rest of it was all just based around easy running. Where if I compare it to my recent block, for the 227, I did two double days a week. So that was a Monday and a Friday. They were double days. So that would have been 13 kilometers in the morning and 8 kilometers in the evening, or if we want it like 8 miles and 5 miles um in the morning and in the evening. And then on a Tuesday, it would have been around 10 miles of single. Um, and then on a Wednesday, I would have done a similar kind of lactate threshold to so half marathon pace to marathon pace type work. There might have been a sprinkle of 10k work in there too. Um, and then on a Thursday, I would have done a medium long run. So that would have been anywhere from 13 miles to 14, 15 miles. And then the Friday, as I said, would have been the double easy run, 8 and 5, or 13k and 8k. Saturday would be off because that's family day. So I protect that day as much as I can. And then on a Sunday, I would have done, yeah, again, a marathon specific long run session. That would have usually been 20 miles or more of work. So it probably went up to, I think it went up to about 38k was the furthest I would have gone to with that. So yeah.
Cool. So what did that workout look like on the Wednesday? Was it? Or was it Tuesday?
The Wednesdays, yeah, the Wednesday workout would have been the midweek workout, and yeah, that would have been anything from like 15 times a k, off 60 seconds, and that would have been from like marathon efforts down to lactate threshold or half marathon effort, or it could have been, let's say, like 2 miles at marathon pace, then like 5 or 6 by k at half marathon pace off 60 seconds, and then another 3 or 4 k at marathon pace,
Mhm.
it was all just varying amounts of chunks of marathon pace with some lactate threshold reps, or you might have had maybe a chunk of let's say 2 to 3 kilometers at threshold, and then it would be broke. You might have some smaller, maybe 10k reps to do, and then you're back into threshold again. But it was always just it's a bit of a like it was a bit of an art. But it was kind of you would always have about 10 to 10 to 15 kilometers worth of marathon pace to half marathon work in there. And whatever way we put it together, um, at the start, there was probably a little bit more focus on the threshold part of it. And as we came closer to marathon day, it would be a little bit more marathon paced would come into it, and less of that upper
Yeah.
upper part of threshold.
And how strict are
And
you
then the
with yourself?
weekends, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, how strict are you on the intensity there? Because we talked about it on the easy runs, and I think that some people might
Yeah.
forget that threshold isn't just threshold because of a pace; it's all also the intensity and the feeling, right? So where are you at with that?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really strict on that. And I I would always say, right, this is the limit, So I would go back again to whatever baseline races I had done. So let's say my most recent 10k race, I would have based my kind of threshold off that race. So I think at the time I was working off a threshold of God, I want to say it was like 225 to 230 at the time. Yeah, I think it was 225 to 220 actually. And I just made sure that I never went above that. I could go below it if I wanted to, like I run slower, but never to go faster. Because I always knew that it's a long game, and you have to respect the marathon and respect the training block. And I wasn't always like that. I've come to realize that it took a while to get to that stage. And look, some days you feel really, really good. And, I might text my coach and said that felt absolutely easy. And I felt like I could have done another 5 reps. And he'd be like, yep, that's perfect. That's exactly what we want,
Yeah.
And it's trying not to get carried away, but it's so hard not to get carried away sometimes. But then there's some days that you turn up and it's, 5:45 in the morning, and it's freezing cold and the rain is lashing down, and you're supposed to be running threshold pace and you're 5 seconds a K off it. And you're like, I don't know
Exactly.
what's going on here, So they're the days not to get too beat up about as well.
Yeah.
Um, and also the days that you're running super well, you can't put put too much attention on them either. You know, don't get too highs at the highs and don't get too lows at the lows. You gotta kind of stay in the middle.
So for you, 227 marathon, and
Yeah.
you were using this formula where you base it on a 225, 220 marathon. Is that what you said? Like your threshold pace?
No, no, no. My threshold. So my 10k at the time was 33 minutes. For a 10k, I think I ran recently enough. So I had based my sort of threshold paces off that, which would have get me around a 71-minute half marathon, which is in and around a 3:21 kilometer, I think,
Got it. Okay, yeah,
somewhere around
you
there.
said 2:20 to
Yeah,
20:25. So then what you meant was the 3:20 to
sorry.
3:25 pace, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, got
3:20,
it.
3:25 pace. Yeah,
And
yeah,
this is also interesting to me because my goal now is a 2:38 marathon in Boston, and a 2:38 is
yeah,
3:45 average on like marathon pace. And
yeah,
so when I had a very good workout on the track in Boston a few weeks ago, I did like 3:29 to 3:30. And again, like then I really felt good. I felt like, and honestly, like looking back, I'm also like, I think that was the right intensity. But there's also a part of me which is like, do I just really want it to be that intensity?
yeah.
And then
That
I'm
intensity.
feeling
Yeah,
okay. And could I be just a bit more strict? And then again, hearing you saying this, and I hope that the listeners listening to this is they're like, okay, so this guy is running a 2:27 marathon. He did his threshold around 3:20, 3:25, right? That
yeah,
means that I'm not there. Like I am better than the 2:47. I also believe that, like back to what you were saying, but I
yeah,
do not think, or I know I'm not even close to a sub 2:30 marathon at the time. So I
yeah,
think that
yeah,
like I'm just kind of confirming what you're saying now, but it's just to me at least a bit eye opener again that slower for everything. Like I will still have progress
yeah,
if I do 3:35 or 3:40 for my threshold rather
yeah.
than that, right?
Massively,
Yeah.
massively. Like if you even think about like this is all kind of if you look at, let's say, your marathon pace, like my marathon pace that we were always training towards was kind of 3:33. Now it ended up on the day that it ended up being a 3:29 per kilometer on the day, but in our head it was a 3:33 that we were training for. So never did I ever kind of do chunks of marathon pace that were at 3:20. Now, look, I did a couple of reps. I remember we'll probably get into that later. Some of the weekend long runs. Towards the end, I was doing a couple of sessions that I was getting close to that. But usually, your threshold pace should be close enough to your half marathon pace, and it should be around kind of 10 to 15 seconds slower than your marathon pace, roughly. So if that's any help as well to people out there, that's kind of where I would sort of always see my training. It'd be in around there.
Yeah. Okay, so this is very very useful information. I'm so happy that you're sharing this because it's I haven't had that, like again, specific advice on this on the pod, which
Mm.
I really appreciate you talking about.
Yeah.
And that makes me even more curious about that weekend, like marathon specific long run workout that you mentioned. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so it in the early days, in the early part of the block, it was kind of more so distance and maybe some progressive long runs. And so we would have like 30, maybe 25 to 30K of a progressive long run, starting maybe 10 to 15 seconds per kilometer slower than marathon pace and working down gradually to marathon pace. And then as the block continued, we would do kind of reps of maybe 4 by 5K and, you know, eight times 3K, 3 times 10K, 4 by 6K, all with a 1K float. And the paces of those, you'll probably ask me, the paces of those, let's say the 5 by 5K. They started a little bit slower than marathon pace. Then we for a couple of reps, let's say the first rep or two, and then the middle rep, you'd be kind of at marathon pace. So let's say rep 3 and rep 4, and then the last maybe 1 or 2 reps, you'd be a little bit above marathon pace. So maybe 5 seconds above marathon pace. So let's say my marathon pace was let's say for instance, like a 3:35, you might go maybe like a 3:45 for the first one, 3:40 for the second one, 3:35, which would be the marathon pace for the third one. Then you might hold it at 3:35 for again, and then finish the last one at 3:30, or you might go 3:30, 3:30. Um, very rarely would I've ever gone 10 seconds above marathon pace. I think you'd be knocking on an injury door there. But those would be maybe the type thing. And it was similar for the 8x3K as well. Start a little bit slower and then work into marathon pace, and then work a little bit above it. Very rarely I never did a chunk of just, let's say, I know the Americans are very keen on like 10-mile tempo, 12-mile tempo, 13-mile tempo, marathon pace. I never done them. It's not to say that they don't work. They do work. It's quite a huge part of the American marathon programs. Um, I've just always worked in the kind of the block methods. The floats after each of the kilometer reps would usually be about 30 to 40 seconds slower than marathon pace. Um, or else the other sessions that I would have would be like 20 by K on, K off. But the Ks on would be at marathon pace because they're only for a kilometer. So it's a shorter period of time. Yeah.
So 20 by 1K on, 1K off.
Yeah, so that wouldn't be 40K in total. It would be 20K in total. So you would have 10 reps. So
Okay,
10 reps
got
would
it.
be at marathon pace, and
Yeah.
10 reps would be at marathon pace plus 20. It's 30 seconds roughly. Yeah.
And the float in, like, for those long run workouts that you were talking about, where it's 30 to 40
Yeah.
seconds of, like, what is the float in
Yeah.
between? Like, how long are those?
It's a kilometer. A kilometer.
Also on the when you have like 5 by 5K or 8 by 3K. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for sharing all of that. I just have a couple of more questions, hopefully short ones. I know it's family day today. It's Saturday, so
Yeah, you're okay.
as a physiotherapist, or actually first, just your mileage. We didn't touch on like what your mileage is now. I know that you're also talking about kind of upping your mileage, because we were talking about 50 to 60 miles per week for that very first marathon block. For the 2025 block, it was a bit higher, right?
Yeah, so it went to 70 to 80, 85 miles for the last block. Yeah. So we probably roughly average about 80 miles for that block. 130, probably 130 to 136K for the kind of peak weeks. Yeah. And now for this next marathon block, we're hoping to build up to the 90 miles a week, 95 miles a week. But that would be, I'd have to be doing a few more doubles. And yeah, so I think I mentioned in the last podcast that would be the only way that we're going to be able to do that is because currently I do a lot of singles. So I'm going to trying to save up to purchase a treadmill. And then I would do my double run when my wife is gone training, and I put the baby to bed, and I'll train on the treadmill with the baby monitor beside me so that I can get those double runs in. And we're going to try and keep it. We actually just had a conversation recently, myself and Kevin, my coach, and we're going to try and hold at 6 days. I probably could go over the 100 miles a week if I wanted to, if I broached it to 7 days. But, family is really important to me, and I'd rather keep safeguarding that day. And I think I can still get quite far off that 90 to 90, 92, 93 miles a week while still safeguarding that Saturday off. And so that's what we will be pushing up into. We haven't started that yet. I'm in a 5K, 10K speed block since kind of December. And just because I think it's really important. You've probably heard it. I know you have, because I've listened to a couple of your podcasts that guests were saying that go back and touch base with that sort of 5K top end speed, increase that seating a little bit. So that's what we're doing at the moment. So yeah, um, staying with that 5K stuff for the next couple of weeks up until sort of the middle of March, sorry, middle of February, and then we'll start that build up to that sort of 90 miles from sort of middle of February, I would say. Yeah,
Yeah. Cool. I hope that you'll get that treadmill
that's
soon
great.
so you can combine those
Yeah,
things.
please God.
So yeah, as a PT, like having
Mhm.
more knowledge than a lot of us on these things, are there any like exercises or stretches or anything that you do that you've taken, like that you learned as a professional, uh, that you are using, that you think that a lot of us can benefit from doing to stay free of injuries?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I will say that load management is probably the biggest thing though. Um, so no exercise. I think sometimes people get an injury and then go straight to a PT. They're given loads of exercises. It's like that's your band-aid. Boom. Like this exercise is going to fix your injury. Well, no, like you're injured now because of 9 times out of 10, it's a load management issue. So it's reducing that volume, reducing that intensity, and applying it more appropriately. The strength stuff should be there to facilitate your running and make you a little bit more robust and make you able to handle that load a little bit easier. So the things that you should be looking at is definitely some calf raises and soleus, it's primarily targeting soleus, so with a bent knee. And you'd be looking at a lot of single leg based exercises as well, sort of like single leg RDLs and stuff like that, squats. Just the basics. It doesn't have to be anything overly fancy, overly great. A deadlift, a squat, calf raises, and just that you're lifting heavy enough, you know? And there's no point going in and doing 20, 30 reps of a weight. It's having little to no effect on you. And you should be looking for that kind of um, rep ranges that are smaller reps, your 5 to 8 kind of reps, but of a higher weight. But any local physiotherapist in your locality be able to guide you specifically on your specific needs.
Hmm. How much do you do strength training?
I do very little, and that's me being totally honest. I kind of it's very difficult for me to even get the running in at the moment. And I think my goal even though I preach it, don't necessarily practice it.
Hmm.
It's just that with family commitments, with running commitments, it's not my number one thing. Well, I would be honest. I think, but load management is my thing as well. So I think I know I'm managing my load quite well. If I had somebody who I knew wasn't managing the load quite well and was more predisposed to certain injuries, then maybe we would focus a little bit more on strength training. I think genetics does play a massive role into the need for strength training as well. Look at like guidelines do suggest that we do at least two to three strength sessions a week. Don't get me wrong, and there are massive performance benefits to get it. Absolutely, there are. I just personally just haven't got the time as of yet, and that's
Yeah.
something that I'd like to prioritize into my week. But as you can probably tell from my week at the moment, it's pretty jam packed. So,
Yeah.
well, I might try and squeeze in 20 or 30 minutes somewhere along the line, and it's definitely something that I should be doing.
Yeah. Okay, Carol, just one last question in terms of your running here. What is your next goal?
My next goal is in the marathon is to try and get the kind of 2:22, 2:23 mark in the marathon. I don't think I'll take another 10 minutes like I did off the last one. Um but yeah, get into the low 220s for the next marathon is the key. Going to target Cork Marathon. It's not an overly flat marathon, so people are thinking I'm mad going and doing it, but it's a local marathon, and as well, it's not abroad, so my family be able to be there. Just going back to that family thing, and then after that, I would like to then try and have a stab by the end of the year to maybe break the 220 by the end of the year. So where that is, I don't know. At the moment, maybe try to get to Dublin, for that, but 7 minutes in a year is still quite a lot as well. So I'm not unrealistic as to how difficult that would be, but I think there's still a lot of room to grow there. So I think it can hopefully be achieved or get very close to it either. And yeah, there the goals.
And when is Cork?
Cork is May 31st.
Okay, cool.
So starting the marathon build in February, kind of middle of February.
So last question for you, just to kind of do a full circle here on the whole episode. We talked about your dad and his running. What does he think of your marathon running now? And I mean, you're getting closer to his PR as well. What are his thoughts?
He's loving it. He's loving it. I think he's looking forward to me breaking his marathon record as much as I am. And I think he'd love that. He's my number one fan, and he goes to all my races with me. He travels everywhere with me, and I'd be lost without him. And him and Catherine and the rest of the family. But yeah, he loves it, and he's excited for it. He loves looking at the training. He comments on every one of my Strava runs every single day, no matter what run it is. He'll always comment on it.
Awesome.
And it doesn't matter how big or small a run, he'll always say good job or well done or something like that. So yeah, he's loving it, he's enjoying it. I think he's living running through that at the moment, and he's still getting out there himself. He's 71 now, and he's still running about 4 or 5 days a week himself. So he's loving it. Yeah.
That's great to hear. I'm so honestly just so grateful for this conversation. It's been amazing to hear. I'm so happy and grateful to you for sharing all of this, because it's it's
Thanks,
been
Gish.
amazing. So thank you so much for coming on, Cathal.
Thanks so much for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure, and thanks so much for reaching out. And I really, really enjoyed it. And
Awesome.
I hope your Boston Marathon goes amazingly well.
Thank you. Thank you so much to Cathal for coming on. As you might have noticed, if you were watching this, the quality of the video got a bit worse throughout the recording, but that is just how it is when we are recording from different sides of the world. And there are local recordings, but I don't really feel like having the guests staying on for like an hour to wait for everything to upload 100% after. So that's just how it is, but most of the recording was in good quality, so I'm happy about that. Really happy to have had you on, Cathal, and really happy to have you as a listener here listening. I hope that you enjoyed your run, whatever you were doing listening to this, and stay tuned for more episodes of the Marathon Podcast. Comes out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and there might be additional episodes going forward just because we're having the Boston series that came out on Monday. We were having a Sydney series that will start soon, and there will be more things coming out. So very excited about the Marathon Podcast in 2026, and I hope that you'll stay with us or stay with me and keep listening. Thank you again, and have a good day. You listen to the Marathon Podcast, brought to you by Wallet Studio.